It now gives me great pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker for this ceremony. Mr. Steve Gardner has definitely had some unique experiences since he graduated from Chadron State in 1977. As you can see by reading his biography in today's commencement program, he is an extraordinary adventurer. He is someone who takes it into his own hands to make things happen. First and foremost, he's an English teacher at the senior high school in Billings, Montana. He has attracted widespread attention following last year's publication of his book, Building Student Literacy Through Sustained Silent Reading. The book is based on his research and experience that reading leads to learning, even if it's reading for pleasure. His goal is to encourage his students to become lifelong readers and therefore lifelong learners. In addition to teaching and the publication of his book last fall, he also coached the Billings Senior High girls cross-country team to the Montana State Championship. The student newspaper for which he is the advisor earned a Medal of Merit from the Journalism Educators Association and a Special Recognition Award from the Dow Jones Newspaper Fund. When he isn't teaching or coaching, he's nearly always exploring somewhere in the world and climbing mountains. He's climbed many of the tallest mountains on 5 continents. He's written 3 books on his climbing experiences, including Under the Midnight Sun, that told about his 2 Greenland expeditions. He's also walked on glaciers in Greenland, explored Amazon jungles, run marathons, including the Boston Marathon, and was among the first Americans to visit Odak Island, the northernmost piece of land on Earth. Steve Gardner is a 1972 graduate of Alliance High School. While attending Chadron State, he was president of the International Club. He earned a black belt in Taekwondo, and he was the editor of the Eagle newspaper. During the fall of 1974, he left Chadron State for a year to study in British literature at the University of London. In 1977, he was named the college's outstanding senior in journalism at Ivy Day. His first teaching position was at Campbell County High School in Gillette, Wyoming. In 1990, while teaching at Jackson Hole High School in Wyoming, he was one of 78 teachers from across the country selected for inclusion in the book titled, I Am a Teacher. The book was published by Simon & Schuster. His story was one of 6 spotlighted in Teacher magazine's final issue that year. He was featured a second time in I Am a Teacher on how he used his Mount Everest experience to motivate his students. He has been a member of the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards Committee, which developed the standards for certification of high school English teachers in 1998, and he was the writer for the Middle School Standards Committee. He is accompanied today by his wife, Peggy, who teaches at the Orchard Elementary School in Billings, and his daughter. The Gardners have 2 other older daughters. Steve Gardner is Chadron State's most recent Distinguished Alumni Award recipient. Last night, we had the occasion to celebrate this wonderful event at our Distinguished Alumni Awards dinner. At that time, we presented Steve Gardner with a medal designating this award. I'm going to today represent that award to him. Steve? Our commencement speaker. So, one more round of applause for Mr. Gardner before he speaks.
Thank you very much. Dr. Park, members of the faculty and administration, family and friends of the graduates, and most of all, candidates for graduation with the class of 2006 from Chadron State College. I am deeply honored to be here to receive the Distinguished Alumni Award and to have the opportunity to speak with you. Thank you for giving me both of these wonderful experiences. When I arrived on the campus of Chadron State College in the fall of 1972, I felt like most college freshmen, a bit lost, a bit confused. I wasn't sure I belonged at CSC. In fact, I wasn't sure I belonged in college. Then one day, a couple of weeks after classes began, I saw a poster for a demonstration being held in the Gold Room of High-Rise Dorm. It was sponsored by members of the Chadron Taekwondo Club. Taekwondo was new in the United States then, and I wasn't exactly sure what it was, but I attended the demonstration, watched them break boards, free fight, and complete their patterns. I went back to my room in Kent Hall and sat on my bed, wide awake, until 4 o'clock in the morning. I knew I had just seen something that was going to affect my life. The next day I joined the club and instantly fell in love with the sport. Suddenly, I had friends who shared an interest. We worked out 5 or 6 days a week. 2 days in the National Guard Armory, and the remaining days on the lawns in front of the dorms or in the dorm rec rooms. That made it easier to believe that I belonged at Chadron State College, but I approached my classes with the same determination and enthusiasm that I see in most college freshmen. Not much. However, by the end of that first year, I had earned my blue belt in Taekwondo, and an interesting thing happened to me. Without really thinking about it, I had developed 3 compelling goals. First, I knew I would study Taekwondo until I achieved my black belt. Second, by talking to students from many distant states and countries, I realized that having grown up in Kansas and Nebraska, I wanted to see the world. More specifically, I wanted to study and travel in Europe. Third, by then I knew I belonged at Chadron State College, and sharing a goal with each of you sitting here today, I determined to earn my college degree. In my second year, I did what most sophomores do. I changed my major. Then I changed my major again. But I also wrote dozens of letters to colleges and universities around the United States, trying to locate an overseas study program. At that time, Chadron State College had no study abroad opportunities, and I was lucky to find a college in Pennsylvania that accepted me into a program to study British literature at the University of London. Also, by the end of my sophomore year, I had earned the highest level of brown belt in Taekwondo. I spent the fall of 1974 in London. I attended classes each morning, then left campus and walked for miles, exploring the streets and neighborhoods of London. Because the university had no Taekwondo club, I had to put that goal on hold and live my sporting life there as a member of the university rugby club, which introduced me to a very interesting side of British culture. I traveled to France and to Spain, but too soon my time in London was ended. I sat at Heathrow Airport in tears. My European adventure was over, and the only way I could convince myself to get back on the airplane was to promise myself that I would travel and live overseas again. Although I didn't realize it at that moment, it was my first lesson in how one life goal spins itself into multiple future goals. I returned to Chadron State College for what was my second junior year. Having accomplished one of my major goals, I launched into the year much more aggressively, and by the end of that year, found myself on the dean's list for the first time and proudly wearing my black belt in Taekwondo. With 2 goals achieved, I returned for my senior year as an instructor for the Chadron Taekwondo Club and completed my student teaching at Scottsbluff High School. Then, in May, 29 years ago, I sat here in this gymnasium at the commencement ceremony, much as you are now, and completed my hat trick of personal goals. While I was studying literature at Chadron State College, I discovered the writings of Henry David Thoreau, who has remained one of my favorite authors to this day. After he completed his personal adventure of living 2 years at Walden Pond, he wrote, quote, "I learned this at least by my experiment, that if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live a life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours," end quote. When I read that, I understood that the 3 goals I had set for myself as an 18-year-old had influenced my life through the next 5 years and given me a direction for my time at Chadron State College. What I didn't realize is that the results of achieving those goals would affect me even after 3 decades. During college, those goals seemed very separate. One focused on athletics, one focused on academics, one focused on a sense of adventure and curiosity about different cultures. I was soon to learn that goals are not discrete, but often weave themselves into intricate layers throughout our lives. During my first year of teaching in Gillette, Wyoming, 2 fortunate things happened to me. Even though I had written a couple dozen articles as an editor of the Eagle, Chadron State's newspaper, I didn't think of myself as a writer. When I started teaching, I wrote a few articles about my students. Because of those articles, the local newspaper hired me as an outdoor columnist. It was an incredible thing to me that someone was not only interested in my ideas and my writing, but willing to pay me every week for doing something that seemed like so much fun. About the same time, a fellow teacher talked to me about climbing Devil's Tower National Monument. I decided to go with him one time, just to see what it was like. Just as I had with Taekwondo, I fell in love with the new sport of rock climbing immediately, and we climbed the next weekend and the next. As a teacher, I was free during the summer, and I practically lived at Devil's Tower, returning home only when my hands and feet were too sore to climb another day. I soon replaced my passion for Taekwondo with a new love of outdoor activities. Cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, running, rock climbing, and eventually mountaineering filled my days and gave me abundant material for my outdoor column in the newspaper. After 5 years of teaching, I married my wife Peggy and asked her if she would help me fulfill the promise I had made to myself at Heathrow Airport 9 years earlier. I still wanted to live overseas again and travel. We sent out letters looking for international teaching positions. I'm sure Peggy was envisioning shopping in Paris or architecture in Rome, sidewalk cafes in Madrid. But we landed 2 teaching jobs at the American School of Lima, Peru, on the west coast of South America. That was truly an adventure. Life in Peru is difficult. For more than a year, we boiled every drop of water we drank. We dodged rats in the streets on early morning jogs. We spent candlelit evenings writing letters after terrorists bombed the city's power pylons. But we also hiked the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu, explored the Amazon jungle, crossed the Atacama Desert, and were stunned by the beauty of the Andes Mountains. After 1 year of teaching in Lima, we decided we want to travel more, so we left and spent 3 months visiting Ecuador, Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Brazil. From Rio de Janeiro, we found a charter flight to Zurich, Switzerland, where a German climbing friend helped us buy a car. We spent 5 more months driving throughout Europe, visiting Germany, France, Italy, Yugoslavia, Russia, Ukraine, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, England, Scotland, and Wales. We returned home broke, but happy, and I felt my promise to live overseas again and travel had been completed. The challenges of the mountains, the challenges of international travel, and the challenges of writing about the experiences fostered each other. I continued to climb mountains with my friends, and I climbed in the Bighorns of Wyoming, then the Beartooths of Montana. We stood in awe of the Grand Teton, and then looked down from its summit. We climbed peaks above the Harding Ice Field in Alaska. We climbed for 57 days on the north ridge of Mount Everest until 100-mile-per-hour winds drove us down 2 days short of the roof of the world. We traveled to the northernmost coast of Greenland and explored a range of mountains no one had ever visited, where we climbed a host of peaks that were previously untouched and enjoyed the thrill of naming mountains, glaciers, and fjords. We stood atop Mount Kilimanjaro, the highest peak in Africa, and last year, on Valentine's Day, we reached the summit of Mount Aconcagua, the highest peak in South America. With grander peaks and more exotic destinations, the articles I wrote found their way to editors' desks in larger and more distant newspapers and magazines. These experiences also helped me write 3 books about mountain climbing, and this past year, I found the challenge right in front of me, within the walls of my classroom, and wrote a book about teaching reading to high school students. In reflecting on these challenges and the goals that led to them, I know how important they have been to me. They have placed me in situations that provided significant life experiences, something that University of Chicago psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi calls optimal experiences. Csikszentmihalyi explains that one of our strongest motivations in life is to reach a state he terms flow, in which we find activities so meaningful and engaging that we experience what he calls a transformation of time. He writes, quote, "One of the most common descriptions of optimal experience is that time no longer seems to pass the way it ordinarily does. The objective, external duration we measure with reference to outside events like night and day or orderly progression of clocks is rendered irrelevant by the rhythms dictated by the activity," end quote. To reach this state, we need to challenge ourselves with activities that are difficult enough to keep our interest high, but not so difficult as to lead to frustration. His writing is filled with examples of people finding the state of flow through reading and academic activities, through sports, through playing musical instruments, and through studying foreign languages. People who can find flow improve the quality of their lives, according to Csikszentmihalyi. He explains that, quote, "Such individuals lead vigorous lives, are open to a variety of experiences, keep on learning until the day they die, and have strong ties and commitments to other people and to the environment in which they live. They enjoy whatever they do, even if it is tedious or difficult. They are hardly ever bored, and they can take in stride anything that comes their way. Perhaps their greatest strength is that they are in control of their lives," end quote. My goals of achieving a black belt, of traveling and living in Europe, and earning my bachelor's degree made my time at Chadron State College more meaningful to me. They gave me a drive and a reason for being here. They helped me feel like I belonged. Those goals seemed simple enough at the time, but they have stayed with me and have spun themselves into hundreds of variations over the years. They have layered themselves upon my life. Thank you for the honor of speaking to you on this important day in your life. Congratulations to each one of you on reaching this significant goal. Good luck with your future goals, and may they lead you to many optimal experiences. Thank you very much.